Okay, good evening, folks. Today is the evening of the 10th. We are in July. I normally don't do audios this late, but I was compelled because I was upset and I've got to just get this out there and make a point because it's critical. And unless the truth be told, how could change ever take place if we're operating under a falsehood? And so, what I want to say, and I've been having this on my heart as a burden for a long time now, if I hear another message that God is about to return by the Church of the United States, I don't know what I'm going to do, especially when they discuss scenarios that they hear on local mainstream controlled news. Okay. And this is where they're getting their soup and nuts from. This is where they're getting their conclusions from. And by being subjected to the controlled news, they're led to believe that what they're seeing in the United States is actually happening all over the place. I have news for you, it's not. The United States is in a judgment. I want this audio to be specifically to the church because something has got to wake up. I mean, at some point, these people have got to wake up. You're in a judgment. You are in a very serious judgment. And there are many countries out there right now that are not going through what the United States is going through because the sin level in this country is so bad. It just is, folks. And listening to the men come to a conclusion while they're still jolly hopping in their ways and want to sort of put all this on the table to conclude that the return of the Lord is right around the corner. How could any change come about? How could repentance come about? That is the biggest cop out I've ever seen in my life. And folks, so much can be said about what has been allowed in our country and what's been tolerated, what has been whitewashed, how the Christians have meshed with the world. And I'm going to tell you something. I'm going to back that up right now with statistics on the pornography level in the United States that 87% of the men continue to be absorbed in pornography. We have people that are turning themselves over to pedophilia. The pulpits are toxic with sin crime. And let me tell you, we're watching pastors drop left and right. If Stone Perry is completely accurate, his incredible concern for the amount of pastors who have died in Michigan. But you look at what's happened. That is a governor who's the queen of abortion. The power has been sucked out from among the believer because she has succumbed to the ways of Satanism, to the ways of deep, deep sinful offenses. It's beyond the politics even, where the churches have negated God's mandates because they don't want to upset the tithing. They don't want to upset the people. They don't want to upset the regiment. They have sort of concluded that mandates are just political agendas now, and we don't want to bring political agendas. But they're cowards. They're shepherds that have sold out their flock, let me tell you. And I am telling you what, it is no coincidence when we have seen this church recently get hit by lightning. A church from the 1800s, stable as could be, an incredibly beautiful building that collapsed to rubble. This was right after a terribly, terribly lukewarm message was being preached. And folks, let me tell you something. You look at the component of HEC 293 that is in the vaccines, the same cocktail in the medications, and now in artificial sugar originally created with HEC 293. So you got it being injected into the human body, the children, being taken as medications, which is not doing anything, hardly even taking care of the symptoms. Forget about getting to the root of the problem. Let me tell you something, folks, that's a judgment. And now you can expect to see it on your dining room tables. This component is in majority of the foods now, condiments, everything. The HEC 293 is human embryonic kidney cells, comes from the aborted. You tell me death is not coming full circle. There is no other country that is suffering what we're going through right now. You got death coming in on every level, folks. You can't want death. You can't promote death. You can't fight for death. You can't keep your mouth closed about death. You can't be a part of things that create pregnancies. All this sexual promiscuity, the sexual lifestyle outside of proper marriage brings about all these things. You don't get pregnant by chewing gum, folks. And 99.9% of the time, the act takes place, the procedure takes place to hide the sin, to hide what's going on, or out of sheer inconvenience. It's gotten so bad here that it's even being pushed in the schools. How much further do you need to see where they're trying to turn your children into the opposite sex? We have death coming in through the ground, through pesticides, through Roundup, through Monsanto. You have it coming in into genetic modified, I call it Frankensteinian food, because the human body does not know how to process this type of component the way they have formulated it, because it's so unnatural. It's not God's food. They have contaminated this. It's causing DNA problems, and it absolutely is tampering with your immune system. And that goes very, very well with the cancer causing chemicals that's tied into it. Then you look at all the components in the food, folks. This is not about saving money on ingredients, not at all. They know exactly what they're doing. What country creates a law that says they don't have to tell you anymore what's in your food? They have hid aspartame under 10 different component names that you don't even know what is up or down anymore. There is dangerous chemicals in just about everything that is on those shelves. The potency of vitamins is out the window. The potency is gone, and the prices have doubled. Those things that you're taking. I found out the hard way myself when I tried different brands of magnesium, including a pharmaceutical grade magnesium. I was tested. There was no magnesium in my body. They have pulled the potency out of the vitamins. They are capitalizing on you being sick. There is death coming in on that level. You can look at all the pharmaceutical stock and you can see everything there. They tell you point blank in your face that pharmaceutical has nothing to do with health. It's all about stock. They come and tell you this. We've never seen cancer rates like this in children, ever, in the history of the country. They have doubled up on sugar. They've even added sugar to the cigarette in 2007. Why? Because it feeds cancer. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry, the oncology department. You go higher up and you look at the chemtrails. Look at what's being sprayed. You have it from top to bottom in between. There is ethylene dipbromide. There are prostate cancer causing agents coming from the sky now. There are components that are now making women to where they can't have children, and they don't know what is going on with this. You have it from the ground, you have it to the sky, you have everything in between. The water, fluoride, everything, everything, everything is contaminated here in this country. You are under a judgment, a very serious judgment. And we're all in the crosswind of it. And even the believers that try to walk with God are still being inflicted. And it's taking warfare and it's taking fighting in the spirit to navigate through this. Folks, your TV, that smut that you watch, that you've grown so accustomed to, get it off. You've got to get it off. Change has got to take place quick because people are going down. They're going down. There's just so long he can put up. The church has been sold out. It's so sad what's happening. It's just so sad what's happening. You just can't close your eyes to this. You just can't pretend that this is happening all over. You can't just pretend this is just the way things are in life, that we're in 2023 and this is all at the end and you just tie Fox News into the book of Revelations. Folks, that's not how that works. How many people have missed? It's right in their face, Heck 293. How did they even miss that? That part alone also went outside the United States. And the countries that have succumbed to these perverse lifestyles Look at what they're going through. You do have a handful of countries that are going through some stuff. I believe that the United States is one of the worst. It's one of the worst because we had been given so much. We had been given a constitution where the freedom that only God can offer is woven into that document. And all of that has been snuffed down, and the people have turned to such immoral ways. Well, you could sit there and you can say, that's from the old days. We don't really focus like that. You need to get with the 21st century, all this kind of stuff. Well, you know what? Just sit back and you just look at what's happening. You just look at what's happening because you have to eat 2 or 3 times a day. And every single day that goes by, you're filling your body with this toxic sludge, this condemned food. You're walking in that air. You're breathing that air. Do your homework. Find out what's coming in to the human body. Look at what's going on with the genetic modified. Look what's happening here in the United States. You have death on every level because you can't want death. Death is going to come full circle. You can't promote it. You can't support it. You can't back it up. And that's just only one level. That's just one level. God is just not playing anymore, folks. And these pastors are going down. That's not a happenstance. That's not just by chance. And I don't know what it's going to take to open your eyes. But I can tell you what, there is a generation coming up behind us who are seeing it. They're seeing it. And some of these people, they're not even really church-going people, but they're young people with wisdom, and they're seeing it. They're seeing what's happened, what's going on with the vaccines. They're seeing what's going on with the loose living. They're seeing things, and they're not in support of it, and they've turned their backs on it, and they're going to raise their families the right way. God has not given up on humanity. It is not the close of humanity. You have a generation that has run amok is what's happening. But I could tell you there's a generation behind us that see right through it and they won't have no part of it. But I do believe that God is taking people out. He's pulling them out. And there is a heavy hand over the pulpit because of the shepherds that have sold out on God's people. And it's disgusting. So you better just wake up to what is really going on instead of falling for the cop-out. You go to God and you have him show you. If you can even really hear anymore, you go to him and you let him show you. Because those false messages out there are also derailing the people, maybe the weak-minded people, holding on any day just to come out from under this. Barely no strength at all. They can't handle it anymore. You can't be giving people messages that are not accurate. You can't just be throwing the Lord around like that. You just can't be doing that. I happen to know 2 people. I've known them since 2014. And they would argue with me till they were blue in the face that God was coming back. God was coming back. God is coming back. This thing happens. See, God is coming back. That thing happens. God is coming back. Books, relying on previous people writing books, even with timelines. And they have been all made to look foolish because it didn't happen. In my spirit, I know how he deals with me. And this is not happening. This is not what, it would be nice if it did, but this is not what's going on, folks. You are in a judgment. There are other audios that I've done, one specifically on HEC 293. There's another one that I did pertaining to what God has to say regarding the vaccines. And I would suggest that you take a look at that because I have given my testimony pertaining to what I learned when I learned back in 2011 by Dr. and scientist Teresa Descher, who had opened my eyes to what was happening with these cells from these aborted kids. And that was long before COVID. But it's even more than that. It's even more than that because it seems wherever these various countries, and they're not really that many. You only have about 34 countries that have succumbed to deep sin levels, and these countries are struggling. They most certainly are. They're struggling. They're going through some of the things that we're going through here in the United States. They most certainly are. Whenever you have inflation, folks, it's a judgment. Whenever your liquids or water is poisoned, that's a judgment. Don't you realize that? God didn't have to use a corporation in the past to poison water. You're in a judgment. That's what's exactly going on with all this. You're in a judgment. Inflation, people that are on the street, inflation going so high, people can't, even though homes are paid off, don't know how they're going to hold on with the increase of taxes and that sort of thing. And I could tell you in just the state of Florida, I'll never forget, the greed in the United States is off the chart. America's sin levels are beyond the surreal, okay? It's one of the worst. It's one of the worst. And I remember 2 weeks after Hurricane Andrew hit, you had people wiped out. You had property owners, one county up, that decided to raise their rent $100. Now, back in the day, that was excessive because rents were only going up possibly $15, and you would know a year in advance when that was going to happen. But overnight, the rents went up $100 because they were going to capitalize now on these people that lost everything. I almost broke down. I could hardly believe it. And God showed me. The words I'll never forget was watch. Watch what happens. A balloon just formed. I'll never forget it. 2007, 2008 hit, and the Lord showed me that balloon pop. And Florida got hit the hardest in the housing industry because of the greed. What happened when those people raised the rent $100, you had all the other property owners want to cash in on that as well. And that began to go up. And they were all on the same page overnight. They didn't even give you time. But what happened after that was unbelievable because Florida now set a trend of rents that were absolutely off the chart. Rents everywhere else in the United States hadn't even come close to what Florida was doing. It hadn't even come close. You could still get rents in other states, many other states, for just a few hundred a month. Nobody had ever imagined that rents could start at $2,300 for an apartment. The greed crept up. Other states started running with the ball, and on it goes. But you see, they don't learn. People don't learn. They don't learn when they fell flat on their back in 07, 08. And the price of the houses were praised so far less. Insurance doubled and tripled. Taxes doubled. It's happening again. That's a judgment. People had to throw their keys back at the bank and walk away. Why? Because they couldn't afford. It was like paying 2 and 3 mortgages. They couldn't afford it. You couldn't even rent it out because how would you subsidize that amount of money? Couldn't even rent them out. You had to just give it back. The people lost all that equity. They lost all that money. It happened to a family member. The condo they bought was $240,000, was only worth a little over $100 after this happened. They had to walk away. And now it's happening again. It's happening again, this time all over. Whoever latched on to this greed and ran with it, and everybody just jolly hopping, are going to see this happen again. And it's just so sad because you have, like I said, elderly people who have bought their homes out, and you figure, they're going to live now on their Social Security. All of a sudden now they have $3,000 in taxes, not even including the insurance. They can't afford it. So what's going to happen? Who's going to take them in? It's almost like a recipe for homelessness, folks. It's a judgment. And God doesn't give unfair judgments. He waits and he waits and he waits and he waits. I was shocked when after 2007 and 8, when I started watching the prices eventually go back up. I mean, it was like overnight I heard about rents now suddenly being $2,300 for a 2-bedroom apartment. I could absolutely hardly believe it. And I said to myself, you mean they didn't learn when we collapsed, when Florida collapsed? I mean, it was a trend. It trickled out all over, yes, but it took Florida years to recover. Years. And only to go right back in. You see, because, God is sitting there and watching just stepping all over people, how we sell our properties, even how we lie to the buyers. I had this happen to me. I was offered a condo. Sure, I was in a property that I wanted to come back to because I used to live in the development, and I was offered a fair price. There was something she knew. There was something she didn't know. I had no idea what I was coming into. There was things she didn't disclose. There were things that the homeowners association lied to me about. And right after I signed on the dotted line, the roof collapsed. They had already been in mitigation for 2 years, but everybody lied. I gave the seller an opportunity. I mean, how do I say that? Not the opportunity, the benefit of the doubt, because a lot of people didn't know what was going on. The board kept that hidden, but she knew other things. And she absolutely did not come clean. Even when I found evidence, I had gone to her and I said, "Hey, did you know this? How did you not know this?" And we found out that she lied, that she did know. And you can't do that. You can't do that. In the end, she came forward. I actually said a prayer. There was just a little bit of money that I owed, and I really didn't like what I was going through. I didn't like what I went through. I went through 7 years of hell with the condo for various reasons. It ended up being a big court case, which we won, everything. It was amazing. But I had prayed that she would back up. And I asked God if there's any way that he could get this off my back. And it was that week that she contacted, and when she found out I won such a big jury case, she told me that she was clearing the books and that I didn't owe her another penny. Maybe it was out of fear because she knew she was, not coming clean with me. It's possible. But it's just one example of so much that we have done as people in this country, how we've hurt people. Unfortunately, I know I talk a lot about Florida because I'm from Florida and I'm experienced in Florida. I've seen a lot in Florida. And they consider that the scam capital of the United States. It's just all about the coldness of making the money. There's very little truth in what they say. There's false licenses, false construction licenses. It's just the norm. All these things have become the norm, and people just getting hurt left and right. People getting hurt left and right. And people becoming cold from within. Either they turn cold themselves, or other people that were maybe tenderhearted become cold from being hurt so much. There's a lot that can be said. And I just want to point something out to you. And I want to bring Pompeii to mind. I actually have an article that I did on this. Pompeii was really the height of the Romans, the Roman government. And there was every bit of sexual activity going on at Pompeii. Matter of fact, it was like the sexual epicenter of the world. That merchants could come in by boat, whatever, and they could get whatever they wanted. And they had not been conquered. Rome had not been conquered. Rome did a lot of conquering, but they had not yet been conquered. And the funny, ironic thing to the whole time was that you had Vesuvius right there facing them. Right there, that mountain was right there. And Pompeii could wake up, they could drink, they could do this, they could do that, they could go out, they could walk around and pick their fruit, whatever the case may be. And I'm sure every single day they got a glimpse of that mountain. Vesuvius was right there. Vesuvius was God's finger on the trigger. You understand? As smart as they were, as successful in conquering that they were, now they thought they could just have this sexual epicenter and get away with that also. They had not been conquered. And little did they know they were looking smack straight face to face with their death. It was just a matter of the day that it was going to happen. And the most unbelievable thing happens, which blows my mind, is that when this mountain began to erupt, with each eruption, the acidic, the formation of the acid, of the component, was becoming more intense and more intense and more intense with each eruption, to the point, folks, do you realize it was so intense that it actually melted the brains of the people? You want to talk about a judgment? But what we were left with was a phenomenon, because we don't understand how the human body froze in time like that, where the ash, it just froze in the position that they were in at the time of their death. There is one picture that I have of where the woman is laying face down and she's got her head in her arm. I'm sure just livid over what they were going through at those moments, right? But even her dress froze in time. The cloth froze. It's like it became ashes, almost like Lot's wife became a pillar of salt. Okay? Well, these were not pillars of salt, but these were people that just froze in time into this ash type soot, whatever. It just stayed in the form of their human bodies. The children, the women, the men, the animals, whatever, And then when the explorers went in there, they were able to use a cast, a dye, to preserve that. And it became the most phenomenon of artifacts we have ever seen. And it's so interesting because the last 2 years, people have been doing YouTube videos of this. They can't get over it. The impact of it is being felt everywhere. And you got all different kinds of people that are just talking about it. And what that really is about is that's the impact, the seriousness of it. You got God behind that, trying to say, please look, just look. Because he's a holy God. He can't watch what's going on. It can't get to this degree without the repercussions, folks. We cannot flame fluorescent colors of the rainbow in his nose like this, folks. We can't do this because judgment comes with it. This has nothing to do with the 21st century, a sign of the times, because there's nothing new under the sun, and we're still with a God who never changes. He doesn't change in grace, he doesn't change in his mercy, but he also doesn't change in his justice, because he's a holy God. And he will not, I'm going to tell you right now, he's not going to allow 34 countries to become 196 countries who are flaming the fluorescent flags. It's not going to happen because his judgment is already happening and people are dropping. I saw a news, it was I don't know if this was NBC. I don't remember the name of the news channel, but it was a common channel. And they were not understanding. They said the people are dropping like flies. That's what the news was about. What else does it take? What does it take to see it? What does it take to accept it? Open your eyes, because until you do, you're not going to be able to make a U-turn. So you've got to open your eyes, and you've got to do it quick. This can't delay, folks. It just can't delay. That's about it. It's 36 minutes into this audio. I don't know what else to say. I am very upset. I don't want to see another audio or another video where we got the church talking this other way, because it's not happening. It's not going that way, okay? It is not the time. I could tell you right now, nobody knows the day, but I could tell you in my heart of hearts, this is about a judgment. This is not about God coming next month to pull you out, especially if you're still rocking and rolling the way you're doing. If you're living like the world, if you have meshed with the world, if you are entertained with the things that the world entertains, if you have become lukewarm, if you are not on the same page of when it comes to what he says about these things, about these immoral, illegal mandates, they're not even laws. If we are not on his page, we are ripe for trouble. I'm telling you right now. I'm going to leave you with that.